Alright guys, before we get into this video, I've been using the selfie camera on my phone to do this whole video. So everything is swapped around basically. Don't look at what I'm doing too much, but my explaining is super spot on. So if it looks like I'm explaining something but my hands are doing something else, just know that I've been using the selfie camera and everything is flipped around. So sorry for that. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So for today's video I thought I am servicing a bike, or just actually repairing a few things on it, and there's a few key things I want to share with you guys on the bike. Number one is removing and installing of the BB. I'm going to service the BB right now. I'm going to install it, and then I'm going to show you guys exactly how the crank works, the puller that you're going to use for the specific crank on this bike. There's two different pullers, so I'm going to show you that as well. So for today's video it's going to be removing the crank, what puller do you use and how do you use it, how to remove the BB, how to service and clean it up, and then how to install everything again. And then for the next video I'll move on to the headset. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, turn on that bell notification so you don't miss any new uploads we do. If you hear any dogs barking or babies crying or plane going over, I am at my house at the moment, and we're doing it from here. So let's get into it. Alright, so there's a few things you're going to need for this whole removing and install of the BB. Firstly, you're going to need your crank puller. So we're going to decide which one it is, or determine which one we're going to use on this, and I'll show you guys just how to do that. Then on this specific BB we're going to need one of these big tools here, and we're going to need a number 8 Allen key. Just remove the bolts, the two little bolts on here. Sometimes they do come with a 15mm socket that you use, or 14. I've had a 14 as well, but this one uses the number 8 Allen key. I've already removed the BB and everything, so I'm going to show you guys what to look at, how to clean it, and then on the install process I'll show you guys what to do, so you know, you just basically do in reverse to take it out. Alright, so here's the BB that I removed. It's a cartridge BB. This one is a 123mm. That's the length of the BB. But you can see there it's very dirty, so I'm quickly going to clean this, and then I can already see there's going to be some rust on here, or corrosion, or whatever you want to call it. Then I'll show you guys how to remove that. It's not necessary to remove it. I just remove it, and then I grease it up again to prevent any further spread of the rust on here. What you can use is just a little bit of lukewarm water. I'm going to use my degreaser or normal soap that you guys want to use, and then I'm quickly going to remove the grease on here. Alright, so I quickly cleaned my BB. Hope you guys can see it there. Make sure you clean all the threads, clean all the little corners here as good as you can. Inside there, just focuses on it. Inside there, you don't want to do a half a job on anything that takes this much load as a bottom bracket, because it will make a creaking noise when you ride it, etc. Now as you can see on here, I really hope the camera will focus on this. As you can see there's a lot of rust on there. The other side looks quite good, and then there's a lot of rust on the other side. So what I usually do is I just take a bit of sanding paper, a very fine grit. For this case I'm going to use 100 grit. Soak it in warm water a bit, and then you can just basically remove. You don't have to basically sand it or anything. You're just going to remove the buildup of corrosion and rust on here. And the only reason you're doing this is just to give it a little bit longer lifetime. Now these things are quite cheap, so most of the guys usually just replace them, but for this case I'm just basically going to clean it and put it back, because the bearings are still actually quite good on this, and I don't want to spend unnecessary money on this. So what you can do is just make sure you've taken off all the unnecessary rust or corrosion on there, wipe it down, and then I'll show you guys the next step. You can see there now, you can still see some of the rust. Just focus on there. You can still see some of the rust on here, and you will never remove all of that, but this is just basically to loosen up just a little bit more of that gunk and grime on there. And now you're ready to install this back with some grease. But before that, make sure your frame is 100% clean. On the inside where this thing needs to thread in, there's always a bit of dirt and grime there, so I'm quickly going to clean my frame, make sure that's 100% clean, and then we'll move on to installing this one here. Alright, so I've cleaned my frame, I've cleaned the BB, and just remember, when using water inside your frame or anything, make sure it's nice and dry before you start installing anything else or putting grease or anything there. Let it sit a bit, dry it with a cloth. If you have an air gun, spray it out with that. Just make sure that your bike or the frame on the inside is dry before installing anything else. You see that I've cleaned the threads on the inside of my BB as well, on the frame, and now I'm going to install the BB, well, the holes for the BB inside the frame, and I'm going to install this. Usually 99% of the time on your drive side, the threads with the hole bearing and the axle, everything included, you will install this from your drive side. So you'll have the complete BB, and then you'll have the cap for the end. Now usually 99% of the time you're going to install this from the drive side, and then the cap will come from the other side. So let me show you how you're going to install this real quick. Alright, so I hope everything is lined up quite nice. I'm going to try to do this while filming for you guys. So what I'm going to do is I use this with red rubber grease for things like this. It seals out moist, and it seals the unit on the inside, keeping any moisture from coming in. So this is a pretty good grease to use, but you can use any grease that you can get your hands on. You can use a wheel bearing grease or anything, just as long as you grease the parts before putting them back in. So what I usually do is, it doesn't have to be a massive load of grease. You can just start by making sure there's grease all the way around. Don't worry if there's a bit of grease on the outside, we'll just wipe that off. And then what I do as well, and just put some grease onto this thread as well, and then take some of your grease and just lube this part. Although it seems insignificant, but just remember there was a bit of rust on here and we removed that, so we just want to keep that from spreading. And then we're going to put this in there, and now we're going to use this big tool that I spoke of. Now before you start putting this in, if you can rethread or see which way the thread goes, great. Otherwise it's not too big of a deal. Just make sure you start tightening this one anti-clockwise. So on your drive side, when installing your BB, you're going to install it anti-clockwise. When removing your BB, you're going to remove it going clockwise. So this one is, the thread is turned around. If I can explain it like this, you're going to tighten it to loosen it when you want to take it out, and you're going to turn it the way you would normally loosen it to tighten it. So I'm going to do this real quick, and then we'll do the other side as well. Alright, so I quickly cleaned and installed my non-drive side as well. Now the easiest I can explain this, if you stand on the rear side of your bike holding onto the handlebars, your right hand side will be the drive side, and then your left hand side will be the non-drive side. Drive side is the side that's got all your gears on them, the gears at the front, the gears at the back, the derailleur, etc. So when you install the BB, the drive side goes in first, and you turn it clockwise to loosen it, and you turn it anti-clockwise to tighten it. So it's basically reversed. As you would have tightened it, usually we'll take it out, and if you would have taken it out, that will be how you tighten it. Then when you move to your non-drive side, that's the other side, it will just screw in like normal and screw out like normal. So it's righty tighty, lefty loosey as usual. Now we're going to move on to how to remove the crank, and I've got the crank lying here next to me. I want to show you guys exactly how it works, and it's quite fascinating for me, some of the tools, how they work. If you're not that fascinated about tools, this might not be for you, but I'm going to show you guys anyway how it would work. Alright, so straight off the bat, there's no way of telling which crank puller you're going to use on this, but the moment you've used your 8 Allen key to remove this little bolt here, this normal thread, so tighten is tighten and loosen is loosen, so it's righty tighty, lefty loosey. So you're going to use your 8 Allen key to remove this, just like that, and then you'll be able to tell by the thickness of the bolt. That's the easiest way to tell, by the thickness of this bolt, which crank puller you're going to use. Now you get thicker ones and thinner ones. In this case, we're going to use the thinner crank puller. Let me just grab it here quickly. Now, if I talk about thinner, I talk about this little point here. At that point and that point won't align, but I mean the other one, if I show you this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you look at that point there against that point, you see there's a massive difference. So the other bolt will be a lot thicker, that you usually get that on your Octolinks or something like that, but this is just a normal square tape BB, and it uses this bolt. So we're going to use this crank puller. Now this works is, alright, so how this works is, you don't have to disassemble it like I've done it. I'm just going to do it to show you for the video. You're basically going to turn that into your crank. Now obviously while it's still on the bike, you're going to turn it in there, and what I will advise you guys to do is take a shifting spanner or something that's big enough. It should be like a 22 or something, but anyway, take a shifting spanner. Don't super tighten this, but just lock it a little bit and make sure that it's on there quite nicely. I've seen this happen in the past. If you don't tighten this enough, it will strip the thread, especially if it's not in all the way or so. But just make sure you turn it in all the way, and then just lock it with your shifting spanner. It will make life a lot easier in the future for you. And then you're going to use this little one here. You're going to put it in here, and now this is where the fun part starts. You're going to start turning this inwards, and so what's happening now, you're turning it into the crank, basically coming through here and pushing the BB out of the crank. I'm not sure if it's going to go through all the way, but let's see, maybe it does. And there you see it starts coming, pushing through against the BB, and by that pulling your crank off the BB, and that's basically how you're going to remove your crank. So just two little quick tips I'm going to share with you guys. So to install this crank, you're basically going to put it onto your BB with a little bit of grease on the square tape side of the BB. Put that in there. You're going to use your 8 Allen key and the bolt. You're going to tighten it. You can tighten it quite a lot. There are certain torque specs for this, but I've learned that they sometimes not enough, and then I just give them a bit of a tweak, a bit more, and that's how you install them. To remove them, you're going to just make sure, take out the bolt, make sure if it's the big one or the small one, decide which crank puller you're going to use, install the big part first, then your puller afterwards, and then it will just pull off that crank for you nice and easy. So I'm going to do some motivation up next. Alright guys, before I start with the motivation, I just want to show you guys something real quick. I hope it's in focus and everything. On the frame here, it's quite dirty still. Well, it's not dirty, it's actually staying there a little bit. Make sure you clean this part as good as you can before putting on the crank, otherwise you're going to struggle to get inside there. So that's just basically a pro tip I'm going to share with you guys. Make sure the frame's nice and clean, and then you install the crank on it. The best and only motivation I can give you guys today is just to keep moving forward. I read a quote this morning, and it went about how you are setting your own limits and how you are limiting yourself. And then I watched a movie where it's a cartoon movie and where the elephant needs to sing, but she's so scared to sing. And then one guy told her, just start singing, you won't be scared anymore. And I want to encourage you guys, whatever the situation is you're in or whatever you need to do, just take the first step and just start singing and you won't be scared anymore. So yeah, guys, be strong, stay safe. Please do like the video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, comment. It helps the channel out very, very much. And never say never.